The Witcher trilogy has come to be known for its numerous, complex and gripping moral choices. Choices that frequently leave players stunned in front of their screen as they consider all evidence available to them and the potential consequences that could manifest as a result of their final verdict. The Witcher 1 was the first to experiment with such moral choices, ultimately playing no small part in making this concept a staple of the upcoming games and of the trilogy as a whole. While there are other choices that the player can make before that point in the game, Abigail's fate remains what must be considered the first major and fully fleshed out moral choice of the trilogy. And looking back, it's quite apparent that it was one of CDPR's first attempts. The future games, especially the third one, do a much better job of providing the player with conclusive evidence. There's a complex situation, there is solid evidence, assuming that you search thoroughly, and a moral conclusion can be drawn. Here though, a lot of the evidence that is present is inconclusive. It's a piece of the puzzle, it surely cannot be discarded, but it also doesn't tell us the whole story. It's more of a guessing game, where looking at the odds that something revealed to us might be true, and must make a choice accordingly, despite undeniable ambiguity. And all that takes us to the topic of today's video. The Vizima Outskirts in The Witcher 1 was bound to be an area conducive to complex human problems. The people there were dealing with a deadly plague,
We needs to see you're not ill.
a mysterious beast, the Scoia'tael's looming threat, and the undeniable influence of salamandra. I spent a considerable amount of time looking at everything I could find, and my hope is that you will learn something new about Abigail or this questline today. Was Abigail a member of a dangerous sect? What could the doll resembling Odo possibly mean? Did Abigail poison Ilsa? The structure of the video will be incredibly straightforward. We will follow the game's timeline, analyzing everything in what will be as close as possible to a chronological order, seeing the pile of evidence progressively growing and hopefully getting us closer to an answer. I'm Paradoxia, and let's kick off the investigation. First, a small refresher on everything that's going on in the outskirts at the beginning of the chapter. Feel free to skip this section with the timestamps if you're already acquainted with the details. The outskirts sit right outside of the big city and capital of Temeria, Vizima. It appears to be led by this religious and zealous man who calls himself the Reverend, a priest of the Eternal Fire. Odo, Mikul, and Haren are some of his highly placed friends on whom he exerts power and basically rules through. More on them later. And here's a mild book spoiler, but we also have to talk about the Catriona Plague, which interestingly enough was brought to the continent through series time travels. And that same plague is spreading and currently wreaking havoc in the outskirts. A deadly beast also preys on the poor souls of the area. It's a type of specter that brings along with it hordes of barghists. They all manifest in the form of dogs, and a walk outside at the wrong moment can easily mean the end for the peasants. The Scoia'tael's presence also increases tensions even further, as it always does, and I don't think that there's much more to say about it. Now, as if it wasn't enough already, the Salamandra organization also has a considerable pull on the outskirts, given its connections with some of the influential faces of the area. So, the state of the region truly is abysmal. Many of the houses are empty or filled with human remains. Everybody is eager to blame something for their misfortune, and at this pace, the future is anything but guaranteed. Finally, we can't forget about the local witch, Abigail. She finds herself in all sorts of trouble while also having to find a way to make it through these awful times. As the chapter progresses, the tension between the witch and the peasants comes to an unavoidable climax. They blame her for the beast, for the plague, and for nearly all of their problems. They come to see her as a monster. But is she one? The first plot point that retained my attention was a subtle yet meaningful declaration by Shani at the very beginning of the chapter. While discussing the case of Alvin, who now finds himself completely alone, Shani mentions that she will be taking care of him temporarily. More importantly though, she adds that she will be the one who will try to find a suitable home for Alvin.
I'll need to find someone to take care of him. He shouldn't be alone.
It might seem mundane, but it clears up any doubts as to how Alvin got to Abigail in the first place. It's not like Abigail went out of her way to get her hands on the child, which is certainly relevant considering that she describes Alvin as having powers perhaps beyond even his control, something many could try to take advantage of. Before Geralt can even make it to the witch for the first time, he encounters a man on the ground complaining about stomach pain caused by the witch.
Oh, my stomach hurts, cursed witch. Ugh.
As we walk past and then enter Abigail's hut, at first glance, everything appears normal. Well, almost everything. When Geralt asks her about the man in pain outside, she states that many of the people visiting her take her for a whore, when she is in fact but a witch. She emphasizes that the man will soon recover. While this is somewhat benign, it shows that she doesn't refrain from having a bit of fun at other people's expense. If she's been telling the truth though, that man had it coming. She also mentions wanting to buy Barghest's skulls, which is interesting given the many claims that she summoned the beast. It doesn't necessarily mean much, but clearly she is profiting from it in some capacity. And actually, Abigail trying to benefit from other people's problems is a recurring theme for the remainder of the chapter. If you see this specific situation from CDPR's perspective though, she and Kalkstein were probably the most logical buyers for Barghest's skulls, so it's likely something that was practical for the devs rather than a narrative clue. Something more relevant though is a doll that catches Geralt's attention. While it means little at that point in time, it's certainly worth keeping in mind for later. Geralt's second meeting with Abigail proves captivating as Alvin has now moved in, and she confirms that she's taking care of him, but also admits that she can sense something in him, as I discussed earlier.
He has powers perhaps beyond his control.
She then makes a joke pretty much out of nowhere about how she's going to eat him if she runs out of food.
With winter approaching, if I grow hungry, I'll eat him. Doubtless the villagers think so, believing me a monster.
Geralt then asks her, plainly, abruptly ending the fun, "Abigail, are you a monster? Are you one?" To which she answers, "We all hide a monster inside us." And I find that answer very interesting. Someone guilty would likely try their best to appear as good and righteous as possible. It's classic psychology. When someone is trying to be deceptive, they often push too far to appear less suspicious, appearing more suspicious instead. She basically does the opposite of that. To me, this heavily suggests that she is capable of joking about herself, she can look at herself in the mirror, and her conscience appears to be clear. It surely doesn't tell us the whole story. It would be very hasty to draw conclusions from that, but from a psychological perspective, this piece of dialogue isn't trivial at all. Geralt wants information on Salamandra, which is actually the initial motive leading to his involvement in the Outskirts, and the Reverend clearly knows more about Salamandra and appears willing to share his knowledge with Geralt. But first, of course, Geralt must light 5 of the Eternal Fire's chapels in an attempt to scare the beast away. In addition, he also has to help Mikul, Odo, and Haren, who I mentioned earlier in the video. We won't talk much about Salamandra, as clearly it is beyond the scope of what I want to talk about today, so let's focus on the rest and begin with Odo. The encounter with Odo reveals many crucial details. In the beginning, he outright refuses to speak with Geralt unless they get drunk. His reasoning, I hear you ask? Well, spies don't drink. So, drink with me and that means you're not a spy, right? And thus, they promptly consume non-trivial amounts of ethanol. With tongues now loose, they get to talking. There are a few important things to discuss here. First, they talk about a matter involving aggressive plants in Odo's backyard. After lengthy negotiations, a deal is finally made. After completing the deed, drunk might I add, which makes that combat encounter quite peculiar, Geralt heads back and awaits payment. Turns out, Odo has already and conveniently forgotten the amount previously agreed upon. He obviously remembers a lower amount. Was it his memory playing tricks on him because of alcohol? Or was he outright just trying to cheat Geralt? In both cases, this is not exactly a good look and potentially undermines any of his future declarations already. It's fair to point out that he does end up paying the agreed sum though. Also, in the span of our short interaction with him, he mentions hating spies, and sure, that's somewhat understandable, but he also mentions hating soldiers. All of them, except for his diseased brother, of course. It seems he is fond of judging entire groups of people based solely on what they do for a living or their identities. Surely, this is a fact that cannot be understated in the future when it comes to his view on something like a witch, for instance, you know? When your mind is made up even before you meet someone, something known as confirmation bias can kick in, which is something extremely frequent and not limited to scenarios like this at all. But basically you start seeking and valuing any and all pieces of evidence that match your initial belief, while discarding and valuing less the pieces of evidence that go against your belief, even if compelling. So obviously, that's not good. To conclude, he tells the story of a day when fog was so dense he strayed to the witch's house,
where a great beast stared in her window.
Tell me more.
Well, I wasn't about to stay. I turned round so fast I nearly left my legs behind.
Please keep that in mind for later, because I have a theory about this, and yeah, we'll get to that later. Let's just say that I think that it's only natural to question the motives behind his visit to the witch's house. Driven by the same motives as with Odo, Geralt now seeks Haren. After offering his services, Geralt is sent to defend crates meant for trade. Drowners have invaded the area, making trade a risky affair, but they're easy work for the Witcher, of course. After taking care of them, some Scoia'taels show up, meaning to take the crates for themselves. Geralt, who was sent there to defend these very crates, doesn't like the idea of letting them go, especially not to Scoia'taels. This is about to change though when the Scoia'taels mention that the goods are actually meant for them. So Geralt has to make a decision. He can believe their claim and basically turn a blind eye, or he can defend the crates with his life and slay the elves and dwarves. In any case, returning to Haren confirms that the crates were actually meant for the squirrels. This is incredibly dangerous for anybody involved. Trading with the Scoia'taels is sure to lead to a noose around the neck and the gallows, if uncovered. Therefore, it means that Haren willfully keeps key details away from Geralt. He has him do his dirty business through deceptive dialogue, knowing damn well that otherwise Geralt would refuse to help. If there's a common theme that's starting to appear already, it's that the villagers can hardly be considered honest at all. The final piece of the puzzle is Mikul, a Vizima guard. He sends us to a nearby crypt to kill some ghouls, and as we get there we stumble upon the corpse of a young lady who appears to have killed herself by drinking some poison. We'll cover what happened to her a bit later in the video, as there are still some details to uncover about the events that led to her death. Geralt then heads back to Mikul after doing the job, bearing news of the dead woman and of the cleared crypt. Upon reaching Mikul, the bridge is filled with salamandra officers. They appear to be after Kalkstein's laboratory, and when Geralt gets involved, the salamandra can only rejoice at the prospect of killing both Kalkstein and Geralt. Geralt makes quick work of all of them, and Mikul has some interesting feedback for Geralt.
Shouldn't have defended the old man.
What are you going on about?
The old man comes here and talks and talks.
Kalkstein is clearly bothering the guards, and often. He wants to get into Vizima, but they won't let him, so basically they're just tired of hearing him complaining. And apparently that's all it takes for Mikul to think that allowing Kalkstein to be murdered is okay. I would qualify that as quite a bit morally flawed, but hey, you can make up your own mind about that. The subject then changes to Geralt's adventure in the crypt. Mikul is glad to hear about the dead ghouls, but when he learns about Ilsa, it's a different story.
No, it can't be. My Ilsa, I loved her.
Given the vial of poison that Geralt found, Mikul instantly blames the witch Abigail for the deed. Visibly saddened, he refuses to keep talking with the Witcher and sends him on his way. So what conclusions can we draw from our interaction with Mikul? Well, he looks like a rather lazy and morally questionable guard. He seems to love Ilsa, sure, but there is still much to uncover here. And in line with the other villagers, he is quick to blame the witch. It doesn't even look like any of them take a moment to consider all the elements in a rational manner. It's simply become a natural response for them to point the finger at the witch. It's easy, effective, and provides them with a convenient answer to their questions. Hell, maybe even one that they secretly wished for. It also gives them a target, someone to direct their anger towards. After meeting most of the influential villagers, one thing is clear: they are on edge. They are ruled by fear, grief, and greed. Most of the stories they share are deceptive at worst, or gross oversimplifications of the facts at best. As mentioned before, along with helping the villagers, Geralt also had to light 5 chapels of the Eternal Fire, which was sure to rid them of the beast, according to the Reverend. Seeing as the beast still hunts, the leader of the Outskirts loses his temper slightly and shows that he is no better than the rest of the villagers. He immediately says,
Doubtless caused by that witch Abigail, an evil woman.
She brought the beast and all other calamities upon us.
That's a wild claim. All calamities? Like, all of them? Even the plague, which we know for a fact didn't come from her? In any case, his cult-like beliefs are now threatened. Stand in the way of most cults or religions, and you can be sure that they won't refrain from bending reality to suit their claims, one way or another. Their beliefs can never be at fault. If the chapels didn't repel the beast, surely there is something else to explain it. Abigail is merely a tool used so that the Reverend can sleep at night and keep his convictions intact. Before the end of the conversation, he has a rare moment of clarity and states,
"We must know from whence the beast came. Learn the truth."
Just a moment earlier, mind you, he was jumping to conclusions. If anything is clear, it's that even he doesn't know the truth at all. There was hope. Perhaps the leader could have been an honest and rational man, but as the chapter progresses, hope slowly vanishes. At this point in the story, things are about to ramp up drastically. With a better understanding of how things are run in the outskirts, Geralt returns to Abigail. He wastes no time and asks the heavy question. Does she know where the beast came from? Her first reaction is, well, she can't help but ask why Geralt is even asking her the question. Ultimately, she answers and she says that she has nothing to do with it, and also reveals that brewing a certain potion for Alvin could deliver the answers that we all seek. In her eyes, Alvin's powers could lead us to the truth. So she gets to work on the potion, and we must come back in a short while. Alvin drinks the brew as soon as it's ready, and he enters a trance-like state, which supposedly draws on his incredible power as a source.
Abigail, I'm afraid. Why'd they skin the puppy? Why'd they hurt him? He was gentle, he hurt no one. And the girl from outside the village, she screamed, horribly, unlike any human.
Bad children, torturing the witch's puppy again. Innocent blood, evil faces twisted by drink and desire. Plow her well, show her you're a man. Blood-stained gold, the beast is born! Death, the final judgment. The beast has met its end once. It doesn't fear death, it is death. How will you defeat human villainy? With your sword? You who died and still walk amongst the living. Who has summoned me?
Enough. This could end badly. Abigail, break the trance.
As you wish. By the power of the 7 spheres, leave this body. I compel you. Begone!
I'm sleepy.
Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. The first thing to point out is that Abigail does not show any signs of fear or reluctance at the idea of the trance. In fact, well, she's the one proposing it in the first place, and I think it opens the door to 2 likely scenarios. The first being that she knows she did nothing wrong and sees nothing wrong in the truth being revealed. The second is that being the one who made the potion, maybe she controls more than we believe. Perhaps she knows how to make a potion specifically crafted to control the trance and reinforce her innocence, rather than tell the truth. In short, maybe she has the ability to manipulate the spell more than we give her credit for. Unlikely, sure, and I don't think the narrative really hints at that, but I think it's certainly worth considering. After all, would you go to a suspect you're investigating, ask them to brew a potion you know nothing about, and then take the resulting evidence as solid and 100% factual? Surely some caution would be advised. But one thing is guaranteed, Geralt never even brings up that possibility. Now let's go back to Alvin's words. What could it all mean? Let's tackle everything bit by bit.
I'm afraid. Why'd they skin the puppy? Why'd they hurt him? He was gentle, he hurt no one.
As far as I'm aware, there is no evidence or clues left by the devs that would reveal more about a skinned puppy, but what comes next is pretty interesting.
Bad children, torturing the witch's puppy again.
The witch's puppy? Are we supposed to deduce that this is referring to Abigail? Did she have a puppy? I really don't think that the devs left any additional clues on that, but the way it's written, it appears clear. Unless this is referring to the monster, the beast itself. If Abigail summoned the beast, it could be referred to as the witch's puppy. I could see that being the case. I certainly find that section quite a bit fascinating, but clearly it doesn't lead to anything concrete, unfortunately.
And the girl from outside the village, she screamed, horribly, unlike any human.
Innocent blood, evil faces twisted by drink and desire. Plow her well, show her you're a man. Blood-stained gold, the beast is born!
Right, so the wording here, in my opinion, is pretty important. The beast is born. Not summoned, but born. I might be reading too far into it, but it really does sound like the way the beast came to be was not the result of a conscious action, but more of a side effect. The specific instance we get to hear here also appears to imply that a man was part of the root cause leading to the appearance of the beast, possibly taking most of the blame away from Abigail, assuming once again that the trance is legitimate. Also, who got abused in that situation? As we'll uncover later, there are a few candidates, but what if it is actually Abigail herself? What if Odo's prior visit, when he supposedly strayed away from home, was actually very intended and driven by his dark urges? Could it be that his visit was the last straw? That the beast he saw through the window at Abigail's house had just manifested as a result of his actions? It's certainly plausible.
Death. The final judgment. The beast has met its end once. It doesn't fear death. It is death.
Okay, here's a far-fetched theory that I've never heard before, and one that I absolutely adore. The beast obviously manifests in the form of a dog. At the beginning, there is mention of a skinned puppy. Now, what if the evil spectre is actually manifesting partly as a reincarnation of the dog? What if the evil deeds leading to the beast result in something like the spectre invading the diseased dog's body? Or at least his memory? Given everything, it definitely appears unlikely, but I think that the theory has some grounds. I'm just wondering, like, why mention the skinned puppy at all, otherwise? And then the line that goes, the beast has met its end once, it doesn't fear death, it is death itself. I mean, it could definitely match that description. Perhaps Abigail is actually aware that it's likely her dog that's creating chaos, despite having nothing to do with its reincarnation. But she could still avoid the topic of the dog altogether, out of fear that it would be traced back to her. Something that does go against the theory, though, is that the beast, who is also known as the Hellhound, appears to always manifest under the appearance of a dog, regardless of what summoned it. At the very least, it's what the journal entry about the beast entails, which certainly renders the theory very unlikely, but it's still one that I wanted to share.
How will you defeat human villainy? With your sword? You who died and still walk amongst the living.
This appears to be a message directed at Geralt, and I don't think there's much meaning here.
Who has summoned me?
Enough. This could end badly.
I think that the beast is merely asking who summoned its spirit into the conversation, not its creation or origin, but I could be wrong. And that's the question that concluded the trance. It's fair to point out that beyond simply overseeing the trance, Abigail also helps Geralt prepare in every way she can. She shares Berengar's notes, as well as the little knowledge she has about Alzur's demon, a name found in Berengar's notes. What matters most, though, is that we finally have the closest thing we'll likely ever get to an answer about the beast's origin. The villagers' dark deeds caused it, and now it's time to see how the Reverend likes that for an answer. Confronted with the truth, the Reverend answers in a surprisingly calm and rational manner. That's refreshing. He commits to gathering the villagers and says that he will do what is necessary to end this once and for all. Geralt, having now helped the Reverend a considerable amount, receives the precious information about Salamandra he has been seeking all along. But as if things were going too well, doubt reemerges.
And Witcher,
Yes?
nothing. May the eternal fire shine on your soul.
What did he mean to say? Perhaps that he sinned? That Salamandra is more involved than we believe? Or that he is preparing one final betrayal? Or maybe all of this? From this point, it's unclear when or if Geralt will meddle in the village's affairs again. He obtained what he came here for, and is now shifting his focus fully towards Salamandra. But as it turns out, the climax was just about to be reached. While you might think that this upcoming section would be beyond the scope of the video, it circles back to the main topic more rapidly than one might think. The next stop for Geralt is the local inn. According to the Reverend, the innkeeper has a key that unlocks the entry to a Salamandra hideout. And while Geralt intends to ask Olaf nicely for it, it turns out that he will have to loot it off his cold corpse instead. First though, he must deal with some enemies. Some thugs have attacked the inn and killed many innocents, including Olaf, and now have their eyes set on Shani as their next victim. Interestingly, we can overhear them talking about their plans to treat Shani the same way they treated Mikul's girl, Ilsa, and this is an interesting plot point, and it's difficult to know what the exact implications are. But as we will soon uncover, there are rumors that Mikul himself abused Ilsa. But if we go back to Alvin's trance, and more specifically to the line, "Flower well, show her you're a man," perhaps the person talking could be one of the thugs here, and the man committing the act, Mikul. It doesn't necessarily imply that Mikul was forced to do the act, quite the contrary, but once again, like many of the elements in this chapter, the wording is definitely up to interpretation. Is it still likely that both parties had nothing to do with each other at all? Sure. But the way the dialogue is written piqued my curiosity enough to ask, is it possible that the trance's wording actually described a situation implicating both the thugs here and Mikul? Or am I reading too far into it and both instances are completely disconnected? I'm afraid only CDPR could answer that question. Alright, enough with the speculative talk. Something that most definitely happens is that Geralt proves more skilled in combat than these thugs. He saves Shani and grabs the key. Eager to uncover more about the lizard organization, Geralt heads to the hideout, key in hand. Two thugs are guarding the entrance. They ask Geralt for his tribute, which apparently is supposed to be a kid. Geralt, obviously not intending to comply, sheds some blood. As he enters the house, even more of them show up to defend the place. What could they be protecting so vigorously? Well, it will all soon make sense. After securing the place, Geralt inspects the area. It just seems like wherever you go in the outskirts, the villagers and salamandra are inextricably tied together. I'm saying that because Geralt notices some crates, but not just any crates, as they appear to be Harens. Not only is Haren trading with the Scoia'taels, he is also trading with salamandra. Perhaps it was to be expected at this point. Searching the place a bit more reveals a hidden passage, and it takes us to an underground cave. Another small pack of salamandra awaits us there. Talking with their leader reveals an interesting detail about Odo. Apparently, Odo came to them recently for advice on how to kill a warrior. That warrior is almost guaranteed to be his brother, who was a soldier and died recently. Now remember what I talked about a few seconds ago when I said that salamandra were expecting a tribute from Geralt, which was supposed to be a kid? Well, there are a bunch of children present, and Alvin is among them. It turns out that the Reverend himself sent Alvin here. The Salamandra organization was looking for children to send to their base in Vizima, and the Reverend and the other villagers played their part, paid their tribute. Geralt, looking for a way out of the cave, smashes a thin wall of rocks and makes it to a different underground cave. I'm sure Abigail is the last person he'd expect to see there, and yet here she is, brewing something. When confronted, she admits that the recipe is a spell which should prove mighty enough for the entire village. The reason? Well, the point of no return has been reached. The villagers are now ready to exert justice themselves. All in unison. They have no doubts anymore. She summoned the beast, she is evil. She doesn't intend to allow herself to be burnt at the stake without fighting back. It's at that moment in time that Abigail mentions that Mikul abused Ilsa. Ilsa then sought Abigail, entrusted to buy poison. Abigail gave Ilsa what she came for. While Geralt brings up the fact that Abigail found a way to make money from the situation by selling poison, the amount of money she made from that is likely slim enough that it hardly plays a role at all, in my opinion. Additionally, it seems to be possible that Abigail was completely unaware of Ilsa's intent. Perhaps she wanted the poison for self-defense, given she had been assaulted many times. That's one of many possibilities. Still, she gave poison to a random villager, and it would probably have been better for everybody involved if she didn't. As the discussion continues, Abigail has accusations for many of the major figures. Odo killed his brother for coin, the Reverend exiled his daughter when she got pregnant, and Haren sold a Scoia'tael to the guards for gold. We already knew about Odo, but the claim about the Reverend on the other end appears logical, I would say. I can see how he would exile his daughter as a result of either his religious beliefs or his pride as a leader, which would ultimately paint an even uglier picture of the man. Now for the final claim she made, the one about Haren selling a squirrel to the city guard for gold, well, given everything we now know about him, it sounds absolutely believable to me. He seems willing to trade with just about anybody, and coin appears to guide many, if not all, of his decisions. So these claims certainly are in line with many of the clues uncovered so far in the chapter, but these are Abigail's final words. Soon it will be the villagers' turns, so let's wait for their side of the story before drawing any hasty conclusions. Speaking of the villagers, well, they're waiting outside. The moment we've been trying to avoid has finally come. But before heading outside, Abigail attempts to charm the Witcher. It could be that she wanted to manipulate him by offering herself, or perhaps she thought that Geralt would turn out to be just as gullible as the other peasants, after all. Or maybe she simply grew fond of him over time, and sensing the doom awaiting outside, merely wanted to spend a short moment with Geralt. But given the deceptive and rather desperate tone that she employs here, her proposal appears more driven by deception rather than anything deeper. It's fair to say that her approach can surely be explained by her desperate situation, but it remains somewhat messy nonetheless. I believe whether Geralt should accept her proposal comes down to the player's preference. If you think that she's not guilty and that Geralt would enjoy it and want to do it, I guess it's somewhat reasonable. However, my personal choice was to decline her offer. Not as a means to incriminate her, but rather just because I believe Geralt has more pressing matters to attend to at that moment. In addition, I also never really felt anything romantic between the two. It's interesting though, because I can definitely feel a sort of mutual understanding, given the labels imposed on them of Witcher and Witch, which is a heavy burden to carry. It clearly deepens their connection and leads to a compelling dynamic, but whether that should lead to something more is up to the players, I guess. Regardless of the decision, it's now time to head outside, as the time of judgment has come. As Geralt heads outside, it's apparent the villagers won't be stopping now. The only thing left for them to do before burning the witch is to try to convince Geralt to join their cause. And they all get to make their final cases, beginning with Odo.
She cast her spells on my brother, wanted to steal him and his gold. My brother scorned her, so she did the devil's magic on me, used me to kill him. The treachery!
I came across a doll that resembled you in her hut.
I dream of it even now! Her magic committing the murder! She should die!
Odo has one of the most meaningful and potentially decisive claims. As discussed earlier in the video, he appears far from being a trustworthy man, but the doll's presence at Abigail's house surely constitutes one of the biggest red flags about her. For a reminder, earlier in the chapter, during our first visit at Abigail's house, a strange doll caught Geralt's attention. And sure, it's pretty damn hard to come up with a plausible scenario other than the one Odo just offered. But what is even harder to explain is the amount of evidence against Odo himself. We recently learned that he sought advice from Salamandra on how to kill a man fitting the description of his brother. There's also the fact that he's a, lazy drunkard who tried to cheat Geralt. He's not exactly the type of man to trust. But I do have some theories to explain the doll, but it's fair to say that they remain theories. The first is that it might have been a sort of defensive talisman. Browsing Abigail's wares, we can find a drowner repelling talisman. Could the doll have been a creation serving a similar purpose? She certainly could have sensed the danger that some of the villagers posed, and rightfully so, and then got to making a talisman which was meant for monsters, only of the human type. Or perhaps the doll wasn't even Odo. I mean, there's a certain resemblance, that's undeniable, but many merchants and villagers have similar appearances and clothing, and here's an example. But of course, we must also consider this from CDPR's perspective. The choice in general here would appear pretty straightforward without the doll, and it makes me wonder, could it simply have been a convenient addition on their part, merely inserted to add some chaos in the head of the player? Something thrown in somewhat lazily so that the choice could be a bit more difficult? One thing that's certain is that the doll, in and of itself, isn't much of a clue at all. It's more like the whole point is that we can't know for sure why it was there. I wouldn't call it bad writing, because this kind of ambiguity can open the door to exciting theories, but given the fact that its true nature could easily make or break the entire story, I find it underwhelming that it wasn't developed a little more. In my opinion, the two deciding factors when it comes to Odo's story are 1. We lack evidence about the doll's true purpose, and 2. Odo asking Salamandra for advice on how to kill his brother is the deciding factor. Whether he was driven by coin, greed, hatred, or all of them together is futile. Based on the limited information available to the player, I think it likely that Odo, in fact, murdered his brother. Driven by dark forces to do the deed? Sure, but his own dark forces. Abigail didn't orchestrate anything. She merely served as the perfect scapegoat. Perhaps having such a strong scapegoat candidate even convinced him to act. Most, if not the whole village, would surely believe his story willingly. How about you though? Do you think that the witch was involved? Let me know in the comments, I'd absolutely love to know, because it's definitely one of the main story points to consider for the final choice. Now moving on, it's Haren's turn.
Why listen to him, Reverend? He's a mutant, a freak, a witcher.
What are your charges, Haren?
She made me a hawker. She promised herself to me if I helped the Scoia'tael. I detest non-humans, but I had to trade with them. You've done all right for yourself.
Gold isn't everything. There are principles to abide by.
The opening is quite comical. They're all trying to convince Geralt, but Haren decides it's better to call him a mutant and a freak. It's an interesting strategy. Let's see if it pays off. Now, I want to say for the entire duration of the video, I've tried to give everyone a fair shot and strictly stick to what I thought were relevant facts. Hopefully I did a decent job at that. But Haren's story here is straight up ridiculous. While he does bring up compelling accusations against Abigail, in the process he also ridicules himself in a truly remarkable manner. Long story short, Haren decided to trade with the Scoia'taels, and the reason behind it all? Abigail would only offer herself to him if he traded with them. He literally admits that he committed the act as a mere consequence of his lust for the witch. If Abigail truly offered the deal to Haren though, it would certainly remain a serious revelation, at least in the eyes of the other villagers. It would also show that she's ready to use other people to achieve her own aims, though nothing has been said about her potential support for the cause of the Scoia'taels in the chapter at all. On the surface at least, it certainly appears out of character. But if we cover the other part of his claim, it's true that she did just offer herself to Geralt in order to gain something. But both examples are clearly different. One appears to be a desperate measure, a life or death scenario, while the other would be about utilizing the gullible nature of a villager to achieve her personal aims. Just not the same at all. Talking about gullible, how gullible and flawed of a man must you be to admit that you agreed to the deal and not see the grave you've just dug for yourself? Had he been offered the deal and refused, it would have been no trivial thing and the villagers would surely have been angry. But here, he admits doing a morally disgusting thing, which he claims to be the case, as a mere consequence of being given a choice? It's not like his life was depending on his decision. In any case, clues have been left all throughout the chapter to indicate that Haren isn't a man of principles at all. He's a greedy man who will stop at little for monetary gains. Given we already know for a fact that he traded with Salamandra, and on top of that we also have a claim from Abigail that he sold a squirrel to the guards, why would he have stopped there? And of course we know he traded with the Scoia'taels. The only question is, was it out of his own volition, or was it to fulfill his end of the bargain with Abigail? If it's not obvious yet, my conclusion is that Haren appears to be leading a life in which too few boundaries have been set when it comes to his money-making methods. Everything appears to be fair game, and when it came time to craft a lie to incriminate Abigail, he likely had a whole array of nefarious acts committed in the past to draw from. In addition, he also omitted to share some details to Geralt when he helped him with the crates, so he's already shown that he's not exactly the type of guy who shares the whole story. Therefore, the words of Haren are of very little value to me and result in little more than strengthening my prior opinion of him. But it's not all over. If there's one last person we must listen to, of course it's the Reverend himself. Let's just say that the leader of the Outskirts will have to do better than his lackeys to convince me at this point.
The witch used Odo and Haren. She poisoned Ilsa. Abigail should have departed long ago, but stayed to exact revenge for the evil fate that befell her. She used the devil's magic on these simple people and summoned the beast.
As can be seen, the Reverend offers nothing in terms of analysis of the claims and doesn't provide any new claims other than the one about Ilsa, which was brought to our attention by Mikul earlier anyway. But the problem here again is that there is just no way to know for sure how the vial was administered to Ilsa. We simply have Mikul's word, which presumably is also what the Reverend is basing his claim on. While we can look at the evidence that's present, which is very little, we can take a different approach and just look at what the most logical scenarios from the perspective of the characters would be. Ilsa drank poison and died. That appears to be a fact. Now, option number one would be Ilsa bought the vial from Abigail and committed the act willingly. Potentially abused multiple times, it seems likely that Ilsa could have been heavily traumatized and afraid of what would come next. Option number two, Abigail poisoned Ilsa against her will. How? That remains a mystery. Perhaps she could have lied about the content of the vial or somehow forced her to drink it. Option number 2 is, well, clearly possible. It would be futile to use the evidence at our disposal to attempt to clear up any doubts. But the real weakness in that theory appears to be Abigail's motives. What would Abigail win by poisoning Ilsa? Ilsa's corpse was fresh, so the act must have taken place recently. And remember, the villagers were already blaming her for all sorts of evil acts, not least of which was summoning the beast itself. Surely it would make very little sense from her perspective to kill Ilsa on top of it all. It's essentially just a lose-lose situation for her. Any additional accusations could have had horrible repercussions. The villagers would certainly like to imply that she relishes any and all opportunities to create chaos and terror, but I believe that the clues we have found about her up to this point play in her favor, contrary to the rest of the villagers. It's not like it looks like she's a perfect person, but there's just not enough solid evidence to explain why they keep blaming everything on her. As a result, I strongly believe that the most likely outcome is that Ilsa took her own life, and without stronger evidence, I cannot possibly consider the alternate choice as more likely, or even just likely at all. The time has come. Geralt, so inextricably tangled in the situation, will have a defining impact on the outcome. It's not a matter of choice anymore. It's not merely about a yes or a no. Walk away and you will be the cause of her death. Protect the witch and you'll likely be forced to shed an unthinkable amount of blood. Looking away and ignoring everything from the beginning, that would have been the easy path. What exactly happened in the outskirts? The peasants executed an evil witch, you say? That sounds reasonable. Perhaps hearing it, you'd even want to believe that's what went down over there. But meddle in it all. Stare at the truth. Bear the weight of seeing what should be done. Witness humans at their worst. Witness what the people you yourself are defending for a job are capable of doing. How can you keep going? How can you keep fighting after that? Seeing it all, it's far scarier than any alternative. Again, looking away, that would have been the easy path. But since when does our favorite Witcher ever pick the easy path? Thinking the easy path can even be chosen at that moment in time is foolish. His decision to avoid it was made long ago when he decided to care about a potentially innocent witch. How's that for an emotionless Witcher? During his stay in the outskirts, he has not been merely watching the events unfold, but also analyzing and thinking about them. At least that's my personal takeaway. And now he must go all the way, no matter the potentially high cost, for his own peace of mind. Perhaps the ambiguity of the chapter isn't a weakness, but a strength, after all. There is a certain weight associated with the choice here. How can you feel 100% confident in your choice when even you don't know the full truth about everything? There's a sort of bittersweet feeling that will remain afterwards, regardless of the decision. But hey, Geralt isn't the one forcing the decision here. He isn't the one reaching for his sword. Instead, near enough the whole village is playing that role. From Geralt's perspective, what should the choice be? Well, Geralt is almost done here, and is looking for a way into Vizima. He has found the location of the salamandra base, and maybe, if he is quick enough, he can stop whatever project the stolen Witcher mutagens are currently being used for. But to travel to Vizima requires a pass. The Reverend is clearly Geralt's best bet. Would Geralt risk everything for the witch? With hindsight, it's easier to make the choice. You already know that you can loot the pass off of the Reverend's body, but lacking that knowledge seriously complicates things. But I'd like to think that Geralt's priority would still be Abigail. It's been shown multiple times, Geralt will stop at little to achieve his personal quests, especially if it's related to his family in some shape or form. For that he'd likely ignore the witch in a heartbeat. But when his family isn't involved, things can be quite a bit different. If he truly thought that the treatment she was receiving was unfair, I think he'd step in, confident that he could figure it all out afterwards. Again, involving himself so deeply in the whole situation was enough to force a decision on him. The choice was already made. My read, Abigail's fate is more than unjust. It's cruel. There is little to no solid evidence against her. On the other hand, the Reverend, Odo, Mikul, and Haren have all proven that they strictly believe the stories that they want to believe and that they are driven by little more than self-interest. What's been seen can't be unseen. Running away is the lazy choice now. Standing for what's right is the correct thing to do here. You do not become the aggressor, but you do not let the aggressors get what they want, whatever that means. If Geralt chooses to assist Abigail, the Reverend completely and utterly loses his mind.
Since the beginning of time, woman has been the nest of all evil, the tool of chaos, party to the conspiracy against the world and the human race. Woman is ruled solely by corporal lust. To satisfy her insatiable hunger and unnatural desires, she gladly serves demons.
They intend to kill us.
Don't be afraid.
There she is! Burn the foul witch!
No one is burning anyone.
Friends, they wish to scare us. Fear not! They're helpless as long as we stand together!
Is that so?
Begone, Witcher, and leave the witch, or we'll burn you too.
I'd like to see you try, pleb.
Ah!
Shove off, and maybe I'll let you be. You have two options. Wait until I leave and then murder Abigail, but then I'll come back. I'll slay every lice-ridden peasant, anything that moves and can't climb a tree. Or you can try to lead honorable lives, clear your conscience, start again, like humans. The choice is yours.
Thank you, Geralt.
Let's go. We need to deal with the beast.
Following that, both Geralt and Abigail leave and fight the beast together in tandem, slaying it once and for all. It's worth mentioning that the villagers do not help. Finally, the true evil is dealt with for good. You'd think peace would finally prevail. After all, Abigail just contributed to the eradication of the beast, which should certainly calm the villagers. But no. Blinded by their own foolishness, they can't even correctly identify true evil anymore. All they see is a monster in Abigail. Apparently, watching us slay a monster looked fun, so they want to indulge as well. It will prove their final mistake. I love the way that the choice pans out. This is not simply about Geralt butchering the villagers. No, he waits for the last moment. He gives them all the time in the world to change their mind, but when the decision is forced on him, well, he must react. In a way, they really are the ones in control of their own fate. Assuming the player decided to save Abigail, she expresses her gratitude and leaves the area. She can even be found later in the game serving as a local herbalist in Chapter 4. There are some dialogue options, and she can even impact the narrative a tiny bit. While she appears to be living a rather busy life, everything appears in order, and there certainly aren't any major red flags. She definitely appears to be curious about the happenings of the area, but nothing more, and trying to stay ahead of the curve seems to me like a logical survival instinct following her grim adventures in the outskirts. While the title of this section might appear misleading, Geralt's inaction is just as if he'd killed her himself. If Geralt decides to leave and picks neutrality, he still asks for a fair trial, a request that even he should know will not be granted. As Geralt departs, Abigail tries to curse everybody, including Geralt. I thought the words she employed didn't mean much, but after a quick search on the Witcher wiki, it could actually be a pretty big deal. In fact, she says she curses them all in the name of the lion-headed spider, the Black Legba. While I don't want to dive too deep into that, and I actually can't because I don't know anything about it, feel free to pause the video and read the journal entry about the cult on the screen. We know very little about what it could mean and whether she truly was a priestess of the cult or not, but it does slightly complicate things. In any case, all this happens after the decision is made, which means that Geralt or the player couldn't possibly have foreseen any of it. It's important to point out that the curse appears to have failed, or at least proves futile, and does not come back to pose a problem to Geralt afterwards. As Geralt keeps walking, decided to leave the witch behind, he encounters the beast, just like in the other path. This time the villagers are actually here to help. The Reverend rejoices when he learns about the dead beast, of course, and Geralt gets his pass for entry in Vizima one way or another. I say one way or another because at that point the game still gives the option to the player to kill the Reverend after getting the pass. I can see how for someone who basically thought everybody was guilty, including Abigail, Killing the Reverend here could make sense, and it would seriously prevent much of the bloodshed while also taking care of the leader himself. Other than that, I don't really think that this choice is relevant. And of course, shortly after Geralt's departure, Abigail is burnt at the stake. In Chapter 4, if Abigail is dead, the local healer tells Geralt that he has innocent blood on his hands, which basically implies that the healer thought Abigail was innocent. Since we don't know much about the healer, it should probably be taken with a grain of salt. This is without a doubt my biggest project to date and also has been my favorite video to work on. With the many hours I spent recording, researching, writing, and editing, I truly hope I managed to craft something worthy of your time and attention. I would love to talk about anything you'd like to discuss about the quest in the comments, so feel free to share all your questions and opinions, I'm looking forward to them. And finally, thank you so much for watching, and I'll be back soon with a new video. Bye bye.